to do a short case study. I have here something that's in Outside Magazine. It's one of their classic articles. It's from a journalist that has been a writer for a long time, but had a kind of bad run down the Grand Canyon, specifically in Lava Falls. If you've ever been there, that's kind of one of the big ones towards the end of the trip. And the run went poor. He got popped out of the boat and went for a swim. I felt myself seem to fall as is off a cliff, and yes, finally, I caught a sudden breath of air before the river grabbed me again and slapped me sideways and pushed me deep under a second time. And so when this gentleman does make it to the surface, they walk up onto the sand. On the beach, there was a bench of sand created by high water, and I sat down. One of my friends, the only canoeist on the trip, sat next to me and handed me a can of beer. I took it, tried to say something, and my voice disappeared into my throat. I felt the sand crumble beneath me, and I fell over. That's all I remember. My face turned blue, I'm told, then gray, and then my heart stopped. What came next are things I've been told. Some of these things contradict one another. I was there, sure, but I don't recall being dead. I'd like to say I saw heavenly light and felt myself floating towards it. But that didn't happen. I didn't see any beckoning figures or beloved pets bounding across the Rainbow Bridge. There weren't any pearly gates, and I didn't even see a guy with a pitchfork. So then he describes that two people with some medical experience immediately started CPR. They cut off my life vest, wet gear, so that I was naked to the waist, and Justin immediately began CPR. Steve said Justin was as good as a doctor he'd ever seen. By now, they had lost my pulse completely, and I wasn't breathing. They'd gone through 2 rounds of compressions when Dan said he thought he could feel a weak pulse. Very weak. Meanwhile, this is now the patient, had a sense of being dragged out of some deep and dreamless sleep. Where was I? There was a little pain. It felt like something pinching me. Yes, deep in my chest, and it kind of hurt. Apparently, my eyelids began to flutter. My boatmate Bill shouted, "Come on! Come on! Come on!" Okay. So, paints a story. I want to kind of take it one step back and just categorize submersion as a category of a potential environmental problem. Is when people are kind of submersed in something. It's often water, but it could be snow, which is just water frozen, and it could be dirt, it could be mud from a mudslide, it could be grain in a grain silo. It's just being submersed. And so when that happens, kind of one of the first things you want to do is decide whether there is an injury. All right? So we kind of have injury, yes, no. And under kind of this category, the question you need to ask that's going to help kind of send you the direction of thinking about someone being injured is, did they need help to get out? This man did need to be rescued out of the water. He wasn't able to just swim to shore. Someone that needs to be pulled out of the snow. These are things that generally increase the likelihood of there being some form of an injury. All right, so did we need help? If we didn't need help, it's unlikely there's an injury. Not to say that there couldn't be, but our chances are less. If they need help getting out of what they're submersed in, we're more concerned about injuries. And then we go into the categories. All right, so if someone is submersed specifically in water, then water in the lungs could be an injury. Trauma, so this person was going down rapids and so they bump into things, can have major injuries and an avalanche, major traumas as they're tumbling. Are they even still breathing? An injury could just be that they inhaled water or just had an inhalation reflex that stopped the breathing. And then anyone who doesn't breathe for long enough can have no pulse. So this gentleman was breathing when he got onto shore and then rapidly lost his pulse. So that's the category we're in. And then just to review, if you take a medical class, you learn how to fix all these things to best of your ability, and they were able to bring him back. The irony is he actually then succumbed again and needed a second round of CPR before eventually getting helicoptered out. But he's writing the article, so this is one of those success stories, which can be the case when people succumb to these types of injuries of not breathing and not having a pulse from submersion. Then often we can bring that heart back and it may be healthy enough to keep pumping on its own, as opposed to kind of someone who just had a heart attack purely off of that kind of damage to the heart over time. All right. So then other things I want to just point out, since we're in this category, is even beyond the fix of initially these problems, we can anticipate that a submersion-based problem could have other things going wrong. So you want to look for any signs of problems with breathing that progress over time in the next few hours, because they may have swallowed a lot of what they were submersed in, and that can irritate the lungs. All right, you want to look for any changes in behavior. So changes in personality and behavior are a sign that something may be going wrong, and internally, they often present with kind of a nervous system or brain-based change, and you want to look for that in those early times. And then you want to treat someone in case of hypothermia, in the case of submersion with water, even in moderate temperatures, because water is so effective at removing heat, and certainly in colder temperatures. And so those are some of the anticipated problems. And I want to point this out because sometimes when we rescue someone out of the water, we kind of think the job is done, and we high five and then continue on. And what happens is if these things are progressing, there's a short window to get them help. And so rather than thinking that you're done once you pull someone out in a submersion-based problem, you need to still continue to actually get them to get care, especially if you suspect or are seeing the signs of these other anticipated problems. All right, so that's a quick review. I happen to have this awesome background that is the Grand Canyon, and that story came from the Grand Canyon. Worth taking a read. You can just Google search that one out. It was in the Outdoor magazine, and a gentleman that came back to life after having been given CPR on the Grand Canyon, taking a big swim. So that's it. Best of luck. Staying safe out there. Don't forget to review the tips and tricks about how to just navigate water and creek crossings, and I'll catch up with you again soon.